What if nature itself became a weapon? What if the very elements that sustain life turned against an entire civilization? Today, we dive into one of history's most extraordinary displays of divine power, the 10 Plagues of Egypt, a sequence of catastrophic events that brought the mightiest empire of the ancient world to its knees and forever changed the course of human history. The stage is set in ancient Egypt, a civilization that considered itself invincible, ruled by pharaohs who claimed divine status. But when Moses stood before Pharaoh with a simple request, "Let my people go," he was met with stubborn refusal. This wasn't just a political negotiation. It was a cosmic confrontation between the God of Israel and the gods of Egypt. The plagues weren't random acts of destruction. They were carefully orchestrated demonstrations, each one targeting a specific Egyptian deity. The Egyptians worshipped the Nile as a god, revered animals as sacred, and believed their pharaoh was divine. Every plague would systematically dismantle these beliefs, revealing the powerlessness of Egypt's gods before the one true God. The first plague began where Egyptian life depended most, the Nile River. When Aaron struck the waters with his staff, the lifeblood of Egypt turned to actual blood. Fish died, the water became undrinkable, and the god Hapi, protector of the Nile, was shown to be utterly powerless. This wasn't just about water. It was about striking at the very heart of Egyptian religious identity. The message was clear from the beginning. This wasn't a battle between nations, but between worldviews. The plagues would prove that the God who created all things held absolute authority over creation itself. Each subsequent plague would build upon this foundation, creating an undeniable crescendo of divine power that no earthly kingdom could withstand. The second plague brought Egypt face to face with creatures they considered sacred, frogs. But these weren't gentle pond dwellers. They were an invading army that swarmed every corner of Egyptian life. They filled houses, bedrooms, ovens, and kneading bowls. The goddess Hecate, who had the head of a frog and was supposed to protect childbirth, couldn't protect Egypt from her own sacred animals. The third and fourth plagues continued this pattern of nature, turning against its supposed masters. Gnats emerged from the dust of the earth, covering both man and beast. Even Pharaoh's magicians, who had initially replicated the first plagues, admitted defeat, declaring this is the finger of God. Following this, swarms of flies filled the land, but remarkably, they avoided Goshen, where the Israelites lived. This selective targeting revealed something profound about divine justice. God wasn't simply unleashing chaos. He was demonstrating precision control over creation. The plagues affected only the Egyptians, creating a clear distinction between the oppressors and the oppressed. This wasn't random natural disaster. It was purposeful judgment with surgical accuracy. The Egyptian people began to understand that their suffering had a direct connection to their treatment of the Israelites. Some Egyptian officials even began urging Pharaoh to release the Hebrew slaves, recognizing that their stubbornness was bringing destruction on the entire nation. But Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, setting the stage for even more devastating demonstrations of divine power. The fifth plague struck at Egypt's economic foundation, their livestock. A severe pestilence killed the cattle, horses, donkeys, camels, and sheep belonging to the Egyptians, while the animals of the Israelites remained unharmed. This wasn't just economic devastation. It was spiritual warfare against Apis, the sacred bull god, and Hathor, the cow goddess. The sixth plague brought the suffering directly to human bodies. The boils and sores broke out on the Egyptians and their animals. The magicians couldn't even stand before Moses because they were covered with boils. The gods associated with healing, Thoth and Isis, proved completely helpless. Physical pain now accompanied the economic and spiritual devastation. The seventh plague demonstrated God's power over the very heavens. Hail mixed with fire rained down with unprecedented fury, destroying crops, trees, and anyone caught outside. Yet again, Goshen remained untouched. This plague was announced with a warning, giving Egyptians the opportunity to bring their servants and livestock indoors. Some heeded the warning and were spared. Others ignored it and suffered loss. This pattern reveals the progressive nature of divine judgment. Each plague was more severe than the last, but also more precise in its demonstration of God's sovereignty. The plagues weren't just about forcing compliance. They were about revealing truth. Every Egyptian deity was being systematically proven powerless, while the God of the oppressed Israelites displayed absolute authority over every aspect of creation. The eighth and ninth plagues brought devastation that touched the very essence of Egyptian spirituality and daily existence. Locusts swarmed the land, devouring everything the hail had left behind. These insects consumed every green thing, every herb, every fruit tree, until nothing green remained throughout all Egypt. The god Serapia, who was supposed to protect against locusts, stood powerless against this living carpet of destruction. But it was the ninth plague that struck at Egypt's deepest religious beliefs. For 3 days, darkness covered the land. But this wasn't ordinary night. This was a darkness so thick it could be felt, a supernatural blackness that made movement impossible. People couldn't see each other or leave their homes. Yet in Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was light. This plague was a direct assault on Ra, the sun god, who was considered the king of all Egyptian gods. The sun, which Egyptians believed was carried across the sky in Re's solar boat, had been extinguished by a power greater than their greatest deity. The psychological impact was devastating. If their most powerful god could be overcome, what hope did they have? The darkness wasn't just physical, it was spiritual and emotional. It represented the darkness of oppression, the darkness of injustice, and the darkness of stubborn pride that refused to acknowledge truth. While Egyptians sat trapped in impenetrable blackness, the Israelites enjoyed supernatural light, a powerful symbol of the spiritual freedom that comes from walking in God's ways. After 9 devastating plagues, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. The final plague would be the most terrible of all, the death of the firstborn. This wasn't arbitrary destruction. It was the culmination of divine justice. For years, Egyptian policy had included the systematic murder of Hebrew male babies. Now, the instrument of their oppression would become the source of their judgment. At midnight, the Lord struck down every firstborn in Egypt, from Pharaoh's son, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. There was loud wailing in Egypt, for there wasn't a house without someone dead. Yet every Israelite home was protected by the blood of the Passover lamb on their doorposts. This plague revealed the ultimate powerlessness of Pharaoh himself, who claimed to be a god. His own son, his heir, the future of his dynasty, lay dead. All his military might, all his supposed divine authority, all his economic power couldn't protect what mattered most to him. The god of the oppressed slaves had reached into the royal palace itself. The Egyptians, who had once seen the Israelites as valuable slave labor, now begged them to leave immediately. They loaded them with gold, silver, and clothing, anything to speed their departure. The oppressors had become the supplicants, desperate to appease the god whose power they had finally recognized. The roles had completely reversed through divine intervention. The 10 plagues of Egypt transcend our normal understanding of cause and effect, natural law, and divine intervention. They represent a perfect storm of justice, mercy, and power that operates beyond human comprehension. Each plague was simultaneously a judgment on Egyptian oppression, a revelation of God's character, and a demonstration of his authority over creation. What makes these events so remarkable isn't just their supernatural nature, but their precision and purpose. They weren't random acts of destruction, but carefully orchestrated revelations of truth. They systematically dismantled false beliefs while protecting the innocent. They offered opportunities for repentance while ensuring justice for the oppressed. The plagues reveal something profound about divine justice. It's both terrible and beautiful, both comprehensive and selective, both immediate and eternal. They show us that there are spiritual laws governing the universe that transcend our understanding, and that persistent injustice will ultimately face divine reckoning. Even today, these ancient events challenge our assumptions about power, justice, and the nature of reality itself. They remind us that there are forces at work in the universe far beyond our control or comprehension, and that true power doesn't rest in human institutions, but in the hands of the one who created all things. The 10 plagues of Egypt stand as history's most dramatic demonstration that no earthly power can ultimately resist divine justice. They remind us that the God who turns water into blood and darkness into light still watches over the oppressed today. What modern pharaohs might be resisting his call for justice? What plagues of our own making await our stubborn hearts?